It's really good to have you all here with us, and hopefully I'll be interesting enough to keep you engaged. So we're studying the Pirkei Avot, different studies from the Mishnayot in Pirkei Avot, and I try to tie it into dating or day-to-day life that everyone's going through. So here is my question before I start and introduce the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, which is, I avoid this topic normally, but this time I'm going to say it because it's to do with what it says here. So, is it okay to speak about politics on dating, okay, or in work, or on the second date? Okay, that might be a bit too close. Well, some people say, well, you need to know who you're going out with. You know, you can't be completely different. You can't differ with someone.
There's no rules in dating.
There's no rules? Well, that's why people are still dating for so long, you know, because there's no rules. When there's no rules, and anyone says, you know, there's rules to making money. There's rules to everything, to business. Although there is a certain siyata dishmaya, sorry if I'm going on, but there is a certain help from God when it comes to everything, right? I believe that in terms of dating, me and my wife, it was the first time, even within the religious community, the way that we date, that doesn't happen for everyone. So, you know, there is a certain help from Hashem in each person, each situation. Every person has their own thing that they go through and that they are challenged with. So there's no question about it. But there are underlying rules that make things work. If you're going to sleep in the morning every day, it's probably going to make it harder to succeed in terms of work and being energized through the day if you sleep until, you know, late in the afternoon. There's certain things that make a person successful. And the same with dating. There's certain things that you do, that you say, that you don't say. Like double dating is something you shouldn't do whilst because then your mind isn't focused on the person that you're going out with. There are rules that make things work, and there are rules that make things not work. So it's important to know that, especially from a Jewish perspective. We are a people that believe that there are truths out there. There's an underlying truth, and we need to be humble to those truths, whether it's within work or within business or dating. There are underlying truths. It's not like everyone just do whatever you want. Everyone can do whatever they want. No one's on top of you physically. You know, you can do whatever you want because no one's watching you. But there are underlying truths of what works, what's right, what's wrong, what's false, and what's good. Okay, for instance, because I have this argument with a lot of people, going off topic, but like, for instance, someone says, I think that everyone's got their own truth. Well, there are many things when two truths argue. For instance, I say there's a creator of the universe. Someone else says there's no creator of the universe. Well, one of us has to be right. So there are truths that they conflict whatever someone else believes is true. So which one's right? One of them has to be right. You can't say both are right. Someone has to be right. Which means that if you get back to the core of things, there is underlying truths that make things work, and there's things that don't. And we have to follow and find out what works and what doesn't. And find out whether it's through learning from people that have the experiences in business. And you say, okay, what was it that you did that made you succeed? Or learning from the Torah, learning from Judaism and our wisdom that we have, ancient wisdom. There are tools that we have in all aspects of life, whether it's marriage. And you have to see, is it succeeding? Does it succeed? Okay, is this rule working overall? Is it making society a better place? And then if it does, then you follow it. Okay, but that's another whole discussion. But here is my response about politics. Me personally, I avoid politics completely. I have something a lot wiser to sell than politics, which is Judaism and meaning to life. I think that as a rabbi, if I resort only to politics, there's something wrong with what I have to offer. There's a lot more to Judaism than just discussing political views. And the same is, I think, in terms of dating, and I think in general, a person should look for someone that's apolitical, that's not strict to one party. And I spoke about this last week. The problem with people that are stuck to certain parties is that they're more committed to the movement than to the truth. You hear that? They're more committed to the movement than the truth. And we want to be committed to the truth, not to movements. Because movements in itself doesn't work. Sometimes they are making mistakes. They have made, they are not coming from the right place. So we have to ask, what is the truth, not what is the movement only. Okay? And that applies to Judaism as well. We follow Judaism, but we have to ask, what is the reason behind what we're doing? Is there a deeper wisdom behind it? We have to ask those questions also. Okay. So he says like this, and from here I got the idea, which is we're in chapter 3, and this is a great rabbi who was killed by the Romans. He was one of the big rabbis that was killed himself by the Romans. We're going to mention a few of the other rabbis also that were killed by the Romans. This is during the time of the destruction of the temple. So we're talking about people that suffered from politics or from the governments. Not just anybody. And he said like this, and this is the approach that you could share with others, and this is the approach that you should share whenever this topic comes up. The best way to get out of it and to really send a powerful message. This is it. And he says like this, Rabbi Hananiah Sgan HaKohanim, he was the backup for the Kohanim. In the times of the temple, we used to have a Kohen that used to work, a priest. Any Kohanim in the house? Okay, yes. Nice. So we have one. Holy Jews. So we're all holy, but there's different hierarchies. So there are, it's true. You've got the Kohanim, Leviim, and Israelim. And they get the first. But you should know, even if the Kohen has a certain hierarchy, even within Judaism, the wise person is the one that's valued the most. So you can have someone that was born from a bad relationship, a forbidden relation, which is called a mamzer. A child that's born from a forbidden relation has a certain name to it, meaning it's this. Sorry?
Bastard.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't call it like that. There's a derogatory term.
That's the British word.
The Torah, I'm just telling you, the Talmud says, listen to this, very interesting, a child that's born from a forbidden relationship can achieve more greatness than a Kohen Gadol.
Really?
Yes. If he is wise in Torah and well studied in Torah and has tremendous knowledge and they are well versed and they worked on themselves to a point where they are very great, they will be called to the Torah even before a Kohen.
Why are they called Mamzerim?
So for instance, a woman who was married,
I know.
how the child was born, yeah.
Why do you
How the child was born.
It comes from the word mum zar, which means basically zar is a stranger. It's a strange, a child that was, so to speak, blemished, not by his choice, from a strangered relationship, if that's the right way of saying
Why
it.
don't you just call him Chayzal?
But are they still
Israelis get it.
Absolutely, they're considered Jewish.
So
is a mamzer בעייתי?
No, not at all. There's certain rules about him. In what way? And no Jew.
What's problematic is
No.
the relationship that happened in the first place.
Right.
What he's saying is that a mamzer can even do tshuva. That's the point.
No, he doesn't need to do tshuva. He never did anything wrong. His parents did. Let me explain to you something.
Maybe we have a mamzer over here, so let's not talk about it.
No. Nowadays, no one knows who they are. No one knows, but after so many generations. But let me
So
say,
the female mamzer is mamzerit?
there's another name, Mamzeret, I think.
Dude, don't you?
Yeah, they also have a Mamzeret. Also has different rules. Okay. Let me tell you though that I know sometimes when I talk about this, people get upset because what did the child do wrong? It doesn't matter. In relationships, there are certain things that parents can choose to do, and they bring it on their children, whether it's physically or spiritually also. It's a very important thing. Meaning your free will, your choices that you have are limited. based on the place you're born in, the values, the school that you went to, but the choices that your children make are based on the choices you give them. So for instance, a kid that's born in a family that smokes drugs and deals with drugs all the time, and from a young age the kid has to get a gun and secure himself because he's in a dangerous environment or whatever it is, and all he knows is violence. Okay, that's the child. Is it his fault that he's born in that way? No. That's the family that he saw from a very young age. That's what he saw. He gets into a fight and he takes a person and he almost kills him.
So what do you do with all those Palestinians?
Wait, is it his fault? He almost kills someone. Is it his fault?
His parents.
Well,
To some degree, yes, because it was a choice, but there's a lot more to the picture.
exactly. He was very different than if a child of a rabbi, let's say, went and did that kind of stuff, right?
Someone who's held
Because-
to a high standard from the beginning.
Right, that is true, meaning our free will is very limited. We do have choice in this world, according to Jewish teaching. It's called Nakudat HaBechira. It's only where we question ourselves. But there's many areas where I never even question myself because it's the way I was born or the environment that I was born into. Okay, there's a lot of things that it's not your choice. That being said, if a child is born to parents that are from a forbidden relation, that child themselves didn't choose it, but yet that's the power of a parent. That every choice you make right now is going to impact that type of child you're going to have, the choices your child will have. It's a huge concept. Not only physically, but also mentally, what type of child you have is based on the actions you make now. For instance, let's say you make a drastic decision. You want to live in India. Leave the Jewish community and move to India, and eventually you find someone, you have a child from them, and you have this child. That child is going to be drastically different based on the choices that you made. And the choices that child makes, whether it's good or bad, are going to be influenced by, basically you influence the free will of your children. It's a huge undertaking. Okay, there's another whole discussion about free will. But we were going to the Mamzer, Sgan HaKohanim. This is what he said. Back to the discussion of politics. The rabbi said like this, Rabbi Chanina, Sgan HaKohanim, this big rabbi who was the backup for the Kohanim. He was the backup because he lived in the time of the Second Temple, where the Second Temple, towards the time it was destroyed, was completely controlled, or mostly controlled by non-Jewish governments, the Romans and other governments that were getting influenced. And they said who would be the Kohen and who can't be the Kohen. They didn't want the great rabbi to be the Kohen. So he was a very holy man, a very, very holy man, but they said, we'll put him aside. So that's how they did it, because they wanted to put people with more influence and character into the temple against the will of the Jewish people. There was a lot of power and influence that was pushed into during the times of the Second Temple, which wasn't always the right thing. Bad Kohanim were pushed to be Kohanim instead of the right people. Anyway, so this rabbi, Rabbi Chanina, he said, during the time when he was eventually killed by the Romans himself, suffered tremendously, and he said like this, pray for the peace of government. Hitpalel bishlomat shel malchut. Pray for the peace of governments. Malchut is the kingdom, the people that are on top of the people. Okay. The governments, pray for them, that they should be peaceful. He's suffering. He says, still pray for them. Why? If no one had worry, if no one was afraid from each other, everyone would swallow each other alive. If not for the fear of government and the peace within a government, we'll all swallow each other alive. And that's why, by the way, one of the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, one of the 7 laws that every non-Jew has to have, is that they have to have a court system. They have to have some kind of police system in their government that are making sure that things are safe for the environment to live in. That's one of the laws of the Sheva Mitzvot. There are many laws, but one of them is to pray for the government that they should be peaceful. So that's why whenever you have some kind of argument, what kind of views you have. This is the best response. I don't know, but all I want to say is that we should pray, deflect from the whole argument. But all I want to say is that we need to pray for the health of this government, the health of our civilization, because if not for it, we'll all swallow each other alive. Whether I agree with it or not, if I absolutely disagree with it, I'm talking in a case where I disagree with it, like Rabbi Chanina ben Skana Kohanim, who suffered from the Romans and their power. Absolutely disagreed, yet still he said, pray for their peace. Because if not for the peace, everyone will swallow each other alive, and it could be a lot worse. And because of people like him, the Jewish people are still alive today. Because he said these things even in a time when we were persecuted, and they allowed Jews to remain. They didn't fully get rid of us in certain areas, and they allowed our Torah and teachings to remain, which is quite wonderful. So even though it was very difficult. Okay, so what's the answer? Should we talk about politics?
Probably not.
No politics.
No politics. It's always better
I think
to avoid
the
it.
answer is it should be a values-oriented conversation instead of focusing on the means.
I like that.
That's where the confusion comes from. So when people are pro-gun control or anti-gun control, it's not a matter of do I love guns or do I hate guns. It's about values, protection, your belief system on unity and saving people's lives. It's just people have different beliefs on what are the best means to achieving that. So
Beautiful.
it always needs to be about the value.
Push for the truth,
Yeah.
not for the movement. Exactly. Yes.
She's open.
Any-
She doesn't
yes.
sway left or right.
That's good.
She is open.
Anyone else?
Wow, you should Kyle.
By the way, is anyone else hot in here? I'm getting hot.
Yeah,
Okay.
the AC just turned on.
Okay, it's on. Okay. Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
But like, sometimes it could just be right on a shit off the resume where you don't have to deal with all that anyways.
That's true. See?
Not everyone has
If you do it the right way,
profiles.
They say political parties now. They say-
absolutely. If you do it the right way, where you say exactly how you are
Yeah.
and what kind of background you come, and you have someone set you up, that is ideal, because that way you are going to find most likely someone that's similar to you, and that's going to help.
But what's wrong with actually having a discussion, political discussion? Put aside what Ashton just said right now, but let's say, what's wrong with having a political discussion if it gonna tells you if your values are aligned or not? I mean, I agree with you. You shouldn't align with one party, set of ways to go. But I think that it can save a lot of time or basically waiting until the fifth date until you talk about it and realize that you're not compatible.
Right. If you find that someone is so politically inclined where values are disregarded and the politics is the focus, then it's not a valued that is not a conversation of values. That is a conversation of parties, of groups. So I don't mind having conversations, but as long as we're both focused on finding the truth. If I see that I can't get to truth and that person has a different political view, then I don't see there's going to be a way that conversation will achieve anything, and I don't think that you should continue at that point.
Right,
Meaning,
so I'm saying if they're already going to tell you, hey, I am Republican, or I'm liberal, or I'm like this or that, so it's like, okay.
but that's shifting. That moves all the time. Because politics is something it's not like Torah, which is a strict value.
Right.
So it shifts based on society.
Yeah.
Let's say they say like the Democrats of last year, have now become the Republicans of this year. Right? So no, I don't. But I'm just
They
saying.
had a really nice post about it,
Yeah.
about how liberals went or leftists became extreme, and it's not that the Republicans became more extreme, it's that they became extreme. Anyway.
Okay, yeah, but that's an example where it's moving. I'm not either way. I'm British. I'm not from here. Just getting out of it. So, but it does constantly move. Okay. The Jewish people have always, throughout history, voted a lot more in one side. Then suddenly you see that they're moving to another side. They move to another side. Because we have certain values that we strictly hold by. And those values are irrelevant to what people are holding with today in our society. Okay? Judaism, let's say, always said that you have to respect your... A person, when he gets married, he has to respect his wife and honor her more than he honors himself. Okay, it says that by men specifically. Sorry. So that's what it says, that you need to... Now, throughout history, we're talking about throughout history where women's rights were completely disregarded. Absolutely disregarded. And yet still, even though there are differences, like in terms of mitzvot and things like that, we have different than women. But at the end of the day, the overlying theme in Judaism was always a tremendous amount of respect for women, which never existed throughout the cultures that we lived in. Okay, infanticide is always an example that I always give, like killing a child after it's born was a normal value in Roman culture, in Greek culture. That was normal. That was completely normal. This newly born baby, it doesn't have the mind of its own yet. I didn't want a girl. I needed a soldier. We can dispose of it. That's how they used to speak. That was completely normal in their culture. But Judaism always said, no, that's not okay. And we stood up with our values, and we were persecuted for that many times. So I'm just showing you how there are political views, but then the parties come the focus as opposed to the truths. And I think that when you see that someone's having a debate with you, and their focus is I used to stand on campus all day looking for Jews. Like, that was my job. And that's where it's like the idealistic young guy who's just going to scream at you, like, for no reason, you know? There's just like, everyone's heated on campus. You know what I'm talking about? The people that are tabling there. And then you'll have like one table saying, save the bees. Then there's another table saying something else. And then you have me with like no professional table at all. It's just plastic and a few flyers. And at the beginning, that's how it started. Eventually, our table looked a lot nicer. But then it's like, hey, are you Jewish? And they're like, what? So what do you believe in anyway? You know, and then they used to get very idealistic. So I saw that environment where it was so strong, like this idealistic viewpoint where if the guy's shouting in your face and he's so focused on his political view, there's no conversation, so there's not going to go anywhere. Yeah, but I think that anyone who's focused on a party as opposed to the truth is not someone that you can communicate with. And you could tell them that. You could tell them that, you know, I'm happy to have this conversation if I feel like we're having a conversation to find truth and to know what's right. That's really the underlying thing. Just about open-mindedness, a little point here. Very important. Open-mindedness is not the goal. The goal is to find the truth. So, for instance, that's a mistake that people have. Be open-minded. Be more open-minded. Well, I need to be open-minded until I find the truth. Let me give you an example.
This broadcaster gives you the truth.
Well, forget TV and governments for now a second. I'm talking about, let's say, dating. So you date, so you be open-minded, right? You want to see who's for you. But no one, that's called open-mindedness. You see, you go out. This is for me. Okay, next one, maybe this is better. Okay, this is, right, not swiping. I'm talking about real dating. Right? He's busy with his app or whatever. So, not swiping, but real dating. So what you do is, you go out and you're open-minded, even though you heard that they're a bit different backgrounds, whatever, that's fine. But no one would say that once you find someone and you get engaged and then you get married, that you should say, hey, come on, be a little more open-minded. Right? Open-minded is to get to somewhere. The goal is not to be open-minded forever. It's to get to a certain truth. But once you find that truth, let's say you find your spouse, the worst thing you can do is to be open-minded. Say, oh, maybe there was someone else for me. Right? You do research of which, headphones you want to buy. Is it the AirPods or the whatever? And you do the research and you made the decision. You go and buy it. Probably not a good idea after you've bought it to start going back and questioning and looking and think. You're open-minded till yeah.
I agree with that, but when I say open-minded, I should have specified, I think of grounded open-mindedness. So when I think grounded, I think not egoic and not emotionally attached. And that's what truth is. It's not emotionally attached. It's very grounded. It's very objective. It's not subjective. And
absolutely.
Yeah, there has to be that orientation towards let's find truth. One truth, the absolute truth. It's interesting when you're talking about like there's multiple truths. I don't believe in relative truth. I think there's only one absolute truth.
That's nice to hear. It's refreshing to hear.
Right. Well, I don't
I
know
like
what
that.
that is, and it's more of an intuitive feeling. I have issues with free will, but it's a whole other conversation. But the means to achieving that truth, it's like it might be relative to individuals, across individuals, but at the end of the day, different doors to one house. So that's how I would see it.
Beautiful. Right. A healthy date and a healthy relationship is when you're both working towards the same goal. Okay, so what should you talk about? Here's the next statement that he says. Anyone want to say? What do you think we should talk about in dating?
Values.
Values? Lifestyle? Future? Right, we're talking about serious people here.
How many
Yes.
kids do you want?
Right,
Doesn't matter.
are you Orthodox? Or?
Do you want kids or
I don't
not?
know, I'm thinking about it.
Thank you.
People say that within a month of dating, I feel like.
It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool system. I'll tell you that. Yeah, go on. What was I saying?
Are they willing to sign a prenup or not?
Willing to sign a prenup. Wow. I like that. That's actually a really good recommended thing. It is important. It's recommended. People don't, and I think it's actually a good thing. But anyway,
Yeah.
It's very important.
it is. It solves a lot of problems.
Yep.
Anyone else? Well, we write a ketuvah, which is also a document which binds the relationship.
I mean, is she marrying you for love or the money?
Well, how much are you showing?
That's why you signed a prenup.
That's true. But the question is, how much money are you showing her? If you're showing too much money and not enough values, then she might be marrying the money.
From the first part.
Why are we assuming it's the guy?
A person should avoid, by the way, that's the idea of modesty, is to avoid showing too much of your externalities so that people can see who you are, not for what you have, but for who you are. Okay, so modesty applies to men and women, and it's hiding the externalities, because if you show that too much, then that's going to be the focus. And they're not going to be attracted to who you are and just the things you have. That is the definition of modesty. Okay. All right, so what should you talk about? Values. Here it is. Let's continue. He says the next statement is in this Mishnah, Rab Chananya ben Tradion, another rabbi who was also killed by the Romans. And he says like this. By the way, they were killed by the Romans, but their legacy has stayed on. No one remembers the Romans that killed them. But we all teach these teachings for years on end. Right? There's certain things that don't matter. But what we do in this world in terms of values, that stays with us forever. Right? I don't know how many people here could remember who, I heard this rabbi say, Rabbi Ori Zohar, say, how many people would remember the 4th president of the United States?
People study that.
They study it, but they have to study it to remember it, because that guy's insignificant to us today. Right? Even the people that were the president, we don't even remember who they were back then. After all, when we go, it's all irrelevant. Even if you become a president, it's irrelevant. But the greatness that you do in this world, that is never insignificant. The mitzvot that we do in this world, according to Jewish teaching, that stays with us forever. But eventually all the rest will be forgotten. Yes, what were you saying? Okay. So this rabbi, Rab Chananya ben Tradion, a great rabbi, was also killed by the Romans during the time of the Second Temple. At the end of the Second Temple said like this: 2 people that sit together and they don't speak Torah, they don't speak words of wisdom, so they just have a conversation about anything. That is what we consider a moshav leitzim, a place of mockery. What's mockery? What does it mean to make mockery? Moshav leitzim, a place of mockery. What?
To degrade.
Degrade. Good. What are you degrading? People. Right, what's a mockery? It's very important to know. Litzanut in Hebrew, which means to diss. How do we say in English? We say to diss someone, right? Or can you say that in America too? To degrade someone, it comes from the word litzanut. What does that really mean? What? Okay, yes. Litzanut in modern Hebrew means a clown. It means to take something serious
And make light out of it.
That is litzanut. Litzanut is taking something which should have been serious and making a joke from it. So, this is a great saying.
There's a term for that. It's called being facetious.
Okay, being facetious
Is
is
it
the
negative?
definition.
Is this a negative?
It's a
one?
negative
Yeah.
thing,
Is
right?
it always a negative thing to make light of something negative?
Of something which is good, yes. Because,
Something serious, excuse me.
yes,
Making-
I'll give you an example, I'll tell you why. The Mesilat Yesharim, Ramchal, a great Kabbalistic rabbi, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto from Italy, says like this. He says in his book, when someone makes a mockery of something, it's like a shield which you fill with oils. And when something hits the shield, what happens to it? It slides off. So what happens is, it says in the Talmud that litzanut, mockery pushes away even 100 senses of rebuke. So someone hits, let's say 40, 50, and someone tells them, hey, dude, you got to get a bit more serious with life, and the guy just laughs it off. Laughing things off means that you take life less seriously when it needs to be taken seriously. There's a time to laugh and joke, there's a time to be serious, there's a time to make a mockery, there's a time for everything. But making a mockery of something that's serious is a problem. By the way Jews survived in the Holocaust, many of them, was through making jokes. Making jokes, laughing. When the Jews came out of Egypt, so they faced the oceans, the water, and they said, "Hamiblik en kvarim b'Mitzrayim." Are there no graveyards in Egypt that we have to be here to get buried? They were joking. There's no graveyards. Aren't there enough graveyards in Egypt?
Wait, is that in the Torah? Or
Yes, that is in the Torah.
Oh, wow.
That was a sense of humor. They were facing the ocean and they were stuck, and the Egyptians were coming. They were like, hey, we left Egypt to be... There's not enough graveyards in Egypt. They were taking... So we see that having humor is a good thing. Judaism has always been into humor. But comedy in Judaism goes very well. But that is comedy for things that are evil or things that are wrong. But taking something which is serious and making a mockery of it can actually damage us. That's what it says. So,
You mean dark humor?
well, humor on the expense of someone that's serious, or something that's serious, or something like that. Okay. So, it says like this. So when you have two people that sit together and they just talk about anything and everything, according to Jewish teaching, that's a sense of mockery. Why is it mockery? What are you making the mick out of? What are you laughing at? What's serious that you're making a mockery of? Two people get together and they just talk about anything and everything. Ve'en b'nehem divrei Torah. They don't have the words of Torah. They didn't share something to do with values or some kind of wisdom. They spoke about, this sounds extreme in our culture. Sounds absolutely extreme. But it's not. Because time is serious. And time is everything. People say, time is money. A great rabbi once said, money is time. Not time is money. Money is time. Meaning, I need time. I need time to study and to grow and to become a better person. So when I'm sitting with someone, and I'm sitting in a coffee shop, and I'm just schmoozing, eventually it ends up to taking someone else out, talking about this person, how stupid they are, and that person, and it doesn't achieve anything. I wasted a few hours and never achieved anything. Yes, what were you going to ask?
So, shame, for instance, I think it's like Brene Brown definition, which I really resonated with. It was she defined it as fear of disconnection. Humor is the opposite. It's creating connection. So most people, when they do like self-deprecating humor, they're turning something they have been ashamed of into something that they can connect over. So, please.
Or it can come
Go
from
for
a
it.
place of insecurity.
And it can.
It can be
Yeah.
turning yourself as an end to a means.
Right. So,
In which case it's not healthy.
but in which case, I would actually think that when you're insecure about something where there's shame, and you turn and you add humor about it, it's like you're disrupting this negative connotation to what you were ashamed of. And you're using it as a means to connect with other people and normalize it. And
Right.
but I see in that, okay, well now I understand
What-
that if it is something serious that you do need to work on,
Exactly.
you're normalizing it. Okay,
So, well, I'm just
Philosophize yourself.
I know.
Well, I'm just clarifying that mockery, making a joke of something in order to survive or to achieve or to grow, that's good, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, comedy was our way of surviving a lot of our persecution that we went through. So sometimes laughter is a good thing. But I'm not talking about laughter. I'm talking about taking something which is serious and degrading it. Okay? You see someone who's really important, someone who's holy, someone who's special, and you start laughing about the way they look. Right? That's such a shame. That's an opportunity to learn from that person. I could take you right now to, there's some people that live in LA that are very special. You might walk in and you're like, oh my gosh, right? Because you might see old people or fragile people that seem insignificant. They don't look cool. But it's not about externality. Let's forget how they look for a second. But what can I learn from that person? The mockery can make me dismiss so much greatness that I could have achieved.
Facing disrespect. Okay.
Yes.
Without getting political, we should have that attitude when we take a look at the homeless on the streets too.
Yeah, it's a serious situation. I think that is something that we should help with, not just... Absolutely, yeah. The mental health issue is, I think, the core of the whole thing. Anyway, so he says like this. I'll just quickly finish off. So this is the conversation that you should have, is a conversation of values. And I'll tell you that this is how you will be amazing, is if you go on a date, or if you're in a place where you're having a conversation and you feel like the conversation's going nowhere, prepare some ideas of wisdom. You know, I want to share with you something. I know this sounds crazy because I'm a rabbi and I do this all the time, but just doing this, like, I just want to share you, this is such an amazing idea I heard this week. Oh yeah, really? Okay, yeah, sure, share it with me. Change the conversation into something more which is about wisdom. And that person will look up to you. The way to achieve in dating is to have the person in front of you appreciate you, look up to you, not just like the way you look or seem how cool you seem, but what is it that you have to offer that can make you lift up the environment? Do you know what do girls want in a guy? Someone that can remind them of their dad. Well, if the dad was good, right? Right? Is that not true? If the dad was someone they look up to, obviously every situation.
It's just, I don't know, I have nothing to say on that.
Well, there's obviously.
It's good. It's like a toxic figure you're trying to surround.
Absolutely. I'm not talking.
People that should end up with their spouse in some ways resembles your mother or father is actually statistically proven.
Thanks, Freud.
So, but it's just, you
What
didn't
if-
continue, you just said father, and my like, instinct was just like...
No, there are definitely situations where you say to yourself, and everyone goes through that, I don't want that in my life, right? That everyone goes through that in their own. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about subconsciously the things that you liked about your parent. Those things are the things that you want because that's what you saw as good. Right, that's the role model. No person is perfect, and no parent was perfect. But the good things that you saw from them is exactly what you want in your spouse. Because you say to yourself, I don't want that bad, but I want that good that he had. That absolutely I want. And that's something which is pushed. Yeah, no worries. But that is something that we look for. Why? Because we want to look up to someone. I'll tell you that if you're able to be in a situation where you give off some kind of wisdom, like for instance, it says in the Talmud, Kol haposel b'mumo posel, a great teaching that someone who invalidates someone is invalidating his own self. If you find a fault in your surroundings, most times the Talmud says it's because there's a fault that you are dealing with that you're seeing in someone else. I always give an example of, like, let's say, when we had a baby, so we saw strollers in the street everywhere. Right, I've said that before, but you don't see strollers, right? If you don't have a baby, we see the strollers.
Not on the street all the time.
Yeah, but do you know which? Wait. Do you know which model it is?
Oh.
Do you remember which model? I know the names and the companies that made those strollers, and there are a whole load. There's a whole lineup. It's like JBL and this company and that, Samsung, iPhone. Oh, there's a whole thing. It's like a whole lineup. There's all different companies that do it. So, not yet. Maybe one day when he has kids, so maybe he has.
Strollers more than 300, we got a problem.
Oh, they are expensive. They can get really expensive.
Bro, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they get expensive. So somebody who opens a conversation like that, you see in the world things that are in your mind. That's fantastic. It changes the dynamic of the conversation. It's so much better than just talking about random things, but finding something that is interesting to communicate about, something that's wise, that you can come out with, which is not at the expense of others. That's what makes a healthy communication. Okay, so he says, I just want to finish this, but two people that sit together and study Torah and talk wisdom, they are bringing a Shekhinah into them. They're bringing God's presence amongst them. That's good energy. As it says, we believe that when we speak, we create energy in the world. Good energy is coming out of that. As it says that when people speak amongst themselves, God comes down to listen and it gets remembered. It has an impact on the world. There's a force, there's an energy that comes out of it. Those that think of his name. And it says, only two people that are together. If one person is alone and he's thinking about wisdom, is that also good? And the rabbis say, yes, that also is deserving of reward. As it says that when someone sits alone and is quiet, he's also receiving good energy from that as well. So, what you shouldn't talk about, basically, is the underlying lesson is things that are like politics, and what you should talk about values and wisdom. That's really what we should be communicating. And that's the underlying idea that Judaism's obsessed with speaking about wisdom and Torah and ideas and values and sharing abstract values, stories. That's what's going to get us. So with that, I'll just say one story. There's a famous rabbi, his name was the Kotzker Rebbe, who lived in the 18th century. And when he was a little boy, they already saw that the parents saw in him that he's a prodigy. They saw that there's something amazing about this kid. Genius, brilliant, so at a very young age. He's 4 years old or something. They brought him to the Rebbe of their time. They bring him into the rabbi and they say to him, we have a child who's a prodigy. Unbelievable, genius. He comes up with such brilliant Torah ideas and he's only 4 years old. The rabbi says, come, sit him down. They sit him down. And the rabbi asks him a question. I want to know, where is God? Where do you think God is? And the little boy looks up at the rabbi and says, God is wherever you let him in. Wherever you let him in, that's where he will be. And that's a very powerful, profound idea. Sometimes if we're too proud, we can't let God come in. Or if we're too busy talking about other things, we can't let spirituality get in. So our aim is to make sure that we're speaking about the right things, values, things that are between us and others in terms of not on the expense of others, not which is a mockery of a degrading value, but something which lifts up. That's a way that you can bring God into your life. Okay, so that was the teaching of this Mishnah. There is a bit more of the same idea. It says here, just quickly finish this off, Rabbi Shimon also said that when you eat together, when you have three people eating together on a table, they also should say the words of Torah when you sit together. It's as if you're eating from a place, if you don't talk Torah, it's as if you're eating from a place of idol worship. As it says that any place, any table that everyone's just eating on and walk off, it's a place of vomit, it's a place of bacteria. There's no value to it. What are we doing? We're eating, we're like animals. We eat, we go, we eat, we go. There's no values. But when you have three that sit down together and they lift up the physical, we take the physical and we elevate it. We bring spirituality into it. Then we're now as if we're eating from the place of God. As it says that when in Yechezkel, it says that when you eat on a table, it's a table before God. We have to know that our house is like the temple. The Holy of Holies is the bedroom. And the table is the altar. The table is the place where we eat and we take physical things that we work for and we elevate the physical world.
Unless you have a Sefer Torah at home, then that's the...
Well, that is, but then you're not really meant to. You put it away in certain rooms, Yeah. But what is Judaism? Taking the physical and elevating. We don't just eat. We take a meal. We sit down and we make it Shabbat. So that is also another thing which we do, which is where we elevate the spiritual. By the way, there's a difference between people that live to eat and people that eat to live. And our aim is to live, right? To eat to live, right? Not live to eat.
Live to eat.
No, eat to live.
Yes.
It says that the Romans, what they used to do, they used to eat massive meals, fancy meals. They used to eat. They'd go out into the special fields. It's called achila gasa. This is exact. They would put their fingers in their throat, take it all out, and have a completely different meal. Come in, the room is changed, and there's a whole new meal. When someone's goal is to eat, then it doesn't end. It says in the Talmud that the Babylonians, they eat bread to eat bread. What does that mean? They eat bread to eat more bread with bread. That's what it says in the Gemara. They eat bread with bread. What does that mean? Because when someone eats just for the goal of eating, not to elevate it, not to bring spirituality, so then what's he doing? I work, and you ask the guy, why are you working? So I can afford to bring food to my table. So you see,
This is the destination.
eating is the destination. So he eats. What's he eating? Bread. And then he says, what? Okay, now I need to go back to work. So he goes back to work. Why are you working? To eat. So he eats bread with bread. Because his whole goal is to eat. Right? So at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what is my goal? And it says that even when it comes to eating, like a mundane thing, like eating, if you want to eat healthy, in Jewish teaching, one of the ways to eat healthy is this, that your goal shouldn't be the eating. Your goal shouldn't be just to have benefit. Like Maimonides says, that when you eat, you don't eat just things that are sweet to the palate. Right? When we make the blessing after the meal, what do we say? We say, Baruch atah Hashem, right? Elokeinu melech haolam. Right? You remember that tune? Ha'azan et haolam kulo betuvo bechen bechesed u'rachamim, we say. Hashem, you give us food, and you give food to the whole world. Bechen. What's chen?
Grace.
With grace. What does that mean? We're not just fuel. You know, with a car, nowadays, but whatever. With a car, you fill up the fuel,
Or electricity.
and there's no taste to it. It could easily be that we've just got like some kind of fuel pipe that we go, whoa, and everything goes in, and we don't taste it, but it's not like that. We have oranges, watermelons, there's all types of tastes. We have multiple types of foods. Why is it like that? So it's in order for us to appreciate it and to be thankful and to be grateful. But a person could say, okay, look, there's so many tasty, sweet foods. Maybe that's what I should be eating. Maimonides says a person that eats and thinks that whatever's sweet to my mouth is good. By the way, this is in all aspects of life. Whatever feels good is good. They are absolutely wrong. Just because it's sweet, look at food. And compare that to the rest of life. Just because food is sweet doesn't mean it's healthier. Sometimes actually it means it's less healthy. And the same with everything else in life. Just because it feels good doesn't mean it's necessarily good. If it feels good, that doesn't mean it's good. In fact, maybe worse. Why does it feel good? Because God wants us to enjoy the world. He wants us to have a good time, but not to make that my goal. So I'll finish off. Maimonides says, you want to be healthy in eating? Besides for making it your goal that you're eating to live, not eating to eat, or living to eat, right? He says like this, 4 things that you need to remember to be healthy. And these are 4 signs that someone is healthy, eating for God, not for himself, just to eat in itself. He says, number 1 is you don't go for what's sweet to the palate. Number 2, you never stuff yourself till you're full that you can't eat anymore. 3/4 full. And he says, number 3 is don't wait when it comes to going to the bathroom. If you need the bathroom, you don't wait. Because that is waste in your body. That is waste in your body, and that's not good for your body. You have to get rid of it. And he says, the 4th thing is a person needs to work out every day. And I don't mean a workout in the gym for a few hours, but at least, he says, at least to a point where you sweat your body. So a person should every day get your blood going. Those are the 4 things, amongst many other things that he says, that proves that he's going midarkei Hashem. He's working and eating for God so that he can serve God and be a better person, but not living so that he can eat. because that is not good for us. Okay, so that's what Reb Shimon says, that when you're sitting on a table, you should eat, but also elevate the meal. Otherwise, this is a place of sacrifice. Okay, I'm going to finish, but I will tell you this one last thing, because it's so powerful. You want to hear one last piece of wisdom? It says in the Talmud, who was created first? Humans or animals?
Animals.
Animals. So hey, who's more important? Animals or humans? They were created first. Shouldn't they get some kind of special respect? Because they were created first. And the truth is, yes, humans were created last. And the Talmud says an amazing idea. This is according to Jewish tradition. Brilliant. It says that if you live like an animal, if you live just for the physical, your goal is just for the physical, then we'll tell you there's nothing special about what you're doing. Because even a yitush, even a mosquito came before you. There's nothing unique about you. Even the mosquito was created before you. But if you live like a soul, if you live like a neshama, you connect to your spiritual self, not just to the physical self. Your spiritual self will tell you that actually man was created first. It's true the physical body was created after, but the soul is part of God, and it came before even the creation of the universe. So you have to know that you yourself, you can have a choice. If a person lives like an animal and we just follow our instincts and that's it, with no spirituality, then we tell that person, a yitush came before you, a mosquito came before you. But if a person lives spiritually, we'll tell him, no, it's true, your body came after, but your soul, that came before. It's such a powerful idea. So that's why even when we eat, we take the physical. Judaism's not against physicality. We're about taking the physical and elevating it into spiritual means. So with that, I bless you to have a great night and a spiritual night and a good sleep, so you'll be energized for tomorrow, so that you can live to live and not just live to eat. Okay, any questions or thoughts or anything else that anyone wants to share? No, we're good? You toasted?
Until Friday.
I'm fried. Whew. Okay.